race. Oh, I got it. Live streaming, perfect. You ready? Thanks.
Take it away.
Awesome. I obviously jumped into the Attorney General race about a month ago, and obviously participated in the caucus process. So really happy to be back here tonight to be able to frankly answer more of your questions about the race, state of affairs right now, and of course, questions on the issues. And anything else, frankly, that's on your mind. It could be a comment or a thought that you have with respect to this particular race. And I jumped into the race, frankly, recognizing that residents right now, even as we sit on this Zoom, continue to struggle and are very worried about whether or not they're going to be able to thrive and survive and prosper coming out of COVID. I also recognize that residents are extremely frustrated with government right now. But what I've been stressing is that we live in the best state in the nation. And I know it because I've lived it. As most of you know, I grew up, of course, in the city of Boston, but in a family torn apart by poverty and incarceration, and with a childhood with incredible instability. My mom actually died when I was 8 months old, going to visit my father, who was incarcerated at the time. My father and my brothers cycled in and out of the prison system, and my brother and twin brother passed away 10 years ago while in the custody of the Department of Correction when he was only 29 years old. And so I'm frankly living proof that a girl who grew up in public housing in a family torn apart by such tragedy and trauma could turn that pain into purpose. And I've dedicated my entire life to making sure that every resident in Massachusetts has access to the same opportunities I had. And how have I done that? I started my legal career actually representing children in education cases at a local nonprofit for free, especially students with disabilities. I've worked in state government as an attorney for Governor Deval Patrick. I've also worked as a general counsel at a regional planning agency that covered 101 municipalities in the Commonwealth, pushing for regional equity, which is still a major issue in the state. And of course, as you all know, served as an elected official in Boston, pushing for families to have access and opportunity. And I'm running for Attorney General because this office is more than just the chief law enforcement office. It has all the tools, the resources, the talent, and the human capital to make sure that every single family in Massachusetts has access to a good education for their children, has access to healthcare, physical and mental, access to a living wage, the tools to stay in their home, buy a home, to protect us against predatory practices, especially our seniors, to deal with any type of racial disparity that you can think of, to absolutely make sure that the communities in which we live are prepared and more resilient for the next climate event, or frankly, the next pandemic, and so much more. And so I have been out here, of course, looking to earn folks' support. I'm not taking anyone or anything for granted, hence why I'm back at Ward 4 to have the conversation with each and every one of you with the hopes that I earn your support at the convention during this season leading up to the convention, and of course in September. And I'm done talking at you. I will say I'm honored to have the support of Senator Markey in this race, as well as over 60 elected officials representing every single county in Massachusetts. And working hard, again, not taking anyone for granted, hope to earn your support, and of course, answer your questions on the issues you care about the most. So thank you all for allowing us candidates to come back into your space to have the conversation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And so the floor is now open for questions for folks, so that if you want to ask your question, you can raise your hand, you can drop your question in the chat, or you can unmute and just ask the question yourself. Ben and Jen, is that a residual hand or a current hand? Residual hand, Don.
Yeah, hi, Andrea. Good to see you.
It's great to see you, Don.
The world's a mess right now, as we all know, and there's an awful lot that needs to be done. So if you had to give like your top priorities, knowing that not everything that you want to have done is going to get done, what can you describe what they would be?
Yes, what rises to the top right now based on many conversations, first is criminal legal reform, prison reform, policing reform, still a major topic of discussion in various communities. How do you make sure public safety agencies have the resources they need while creating more transparency and accountability? And I think part of that why it's coming up in conversations that I'm in is because of my previous work as an elected official on these very issues and because of my personal narrative. The second set of issues that rise to the top right now based on conversations is really actually looking at how do we take a holistic approach to helping a family, whether that is a family of one or a family of 25. And why is that important? Right now, families are struggling throughout. I've been in Springfield, Pittsfield, Duxbury, you name it, so many communities where folks are talking about the family and the struggle of families. And what are they? Worried about whether or not their children will have access to good education, worried about access to healthcare. Wage theft is coming up quite a bit, people who are going to work and not getting paid. In addition to that, any type of discrimination that folks are in fear of. And then housing, namely a possible foreclosure crisis coming out of COVID. And when you think about all of that, how do we use all the tools in the AG's office to help a family holistically? Because they need more than just a home. They need a good wage, they need a safe community, they need a good education for their children. So I think this office is uniquely positioned to take that vision and view of looking at a family and helping a family better in a more coordinated way and less siloed way. And then the third, I would say, is climate and the opioid crisis keep coming up almost at the same time, because that is where many view our current Attorney General as being a leader. And so folks really want to see the office continue that leadership on the issues of climate and environmental justice, as well as the opioid crisis, which is exactly what I would do.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, and it's great to see you. And I'll just add, before you call on someone else,
No worries.
I've always also done everything through a racial equity lens. You know, as council president in Boston, that was always the way in which we did the work. So sometimes folks list racial disparities or discrimination. Everything that the office does should be through that lens. And that also is what the office is doing right now, but I would add a greater intentionality and focus with respect to anything the office does using a racial equity lens while prioritizing those top 3 sets of issues.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? I see Carol. Carol and then Amelia. Carol.
Unmute myself.
Yeah, so Carol, Amelia, then Andrea.
Okay.
Hi, Carol, how are you?
I'm good. It's so good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
From an election standpoint, you know, we all know you so well on a city level, and I'm just wondering how you strategically expand, if that's the right word, your messaging to encompass quite a diverse state. In other words, how do you evolve or change or expand your local emphasis to become statewide, basically?
Thank you, Carol, for the question. I would, 2 things. One is I have to get out of Boston. Really important. I'm happy, of course, to be here with all of you and continuing the conversation. I'm not taking any of my people in Boston. I'm zooming in from Mattapan, right, for granted. So definitely showing up where I can, but being very intentional and spending time in the central part of the state, in the western part of the state, in the gateway cities, including gateway communities that are faring worse, frankly, by certain metrics than Boston. And so when I kicked off the campaign, I started in Dorchester and Codman Square, and immediately the same day went out to Worcester and went out to Springfield. No other candidate had done that. And so everyone is still talking about that as I continue to get out there. I was in Springfield, in Chicopee this past weekend, have been in Pittsfield and other communities. And so that is important, to show up, engage in conversation, listen to the perspectives and the issues from folks on the ground, and then of course, respond with solutions from the AG's office or what the AG's office could do. The second piece is the message is resonating. And what am I stressing? One, I'm acknowledging that right now in every conversation we're having, people are talking about struggling, whether that is the middle class, extremely poor, or even those who are deemed to be wealthy, have some concern about something and where they think the state could be doing better. So I'm acknowledging that and the frustration that folks feel with government. But then I'm also lifting up, because I'm a naturally optimistic person, how blessed we are to live in Massachusetts. And why is this? Because this particular state, with all the resources we have in this particular office, unlike any other office, has all the tools to address those very struggles that we're hearing from constituents and residents. And so responding with ways in which the office can actually help, whether that is on wage theft, issues around health inequities, racial disparities, prison reform, conversations around reproductive rights, a whole bunch of things are coming up for folks. It's a whole bunch of issues for sure. And so talking in specific terms on what this state gave me personally to thrive and what I would do as a leader and in the AG's office, using those tools to help another family also thrive, regardless of their zip code or demographic.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, it's great to see you.
You too.
So Amelia, Andrew, then Lisa.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Amelia, it's good to see you.
Likewise. So my question deals with what you just mentioned, which is the power of the office and the resources. And so considering your agenda, what innovation are you going to use to help accomplish the responses to the issues that you've already talked about as it relates to climate change and the opioid crisis?
Thank you for the question. So one thing I want, and I've been telling the team this, we would have failed if at the end of this campaign, the average person, who most of whom don't know who our current Attorney General is, frankly, or what that office does, we would have failed if we don't translate what the office can do in the daily life of someone. And we are using concrete examples. And so on the innovation side, for me, it is really looking at this holistic view of helping a family, which I think is critically important. And why is that important? Because the office has so many bureaus and divisions, hundreds of attorneys and staff, where they actually have the capacity to look at issues through an intersectional lens. You know, obviously we want the communities in which we live to be safer from climate events or environmental injustice, right? But it's more than that. A family needs more than just a safe community, of course, a resilient community. They need a home. They need housing that's affordable. If they're worried about foreclosure, that's a problem. They need healthcare. They need mental health supports. They need so many things. They're going to work and they're not getting paid their wages. That issue is rising to the top. So how do you use this intersectional lens? Specifically on, and so I think that is quite innovative based on conversations with folks in the office and folks who used to work there. And then specifically on the opioid crisis, I think it's continuing what our current AG has done. That has been perceived and received really well. I think we can be even looking further at who are the bad actors when it comes to the opioid crisis. And then the other piece is on environmental justice, climate justice, continuing to frankly be more targeted on these gateway communities and environmental justice communities. So there's some innovative work happening around asthma rates in Springfield and a few things happening in Chelsea on expansion of green space. We need more investment there. Other communities, including Mattapan, are dealing with heat deserts, are clearly in need of more investment, more innovative policy changes at the state and local level to push for some of these changes to happen faster. And so the power of the office is to convene all of these folks to say, how can we ensure the laws on the books for climate are being enforced, but at the same time, expand upon some of these affirmative policy initiatives that the AG's office is taking on, but in a larger way.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So then Andrew and then Lisa.
Hi, Andrea, how are you? I have a question for you, which is, as Attorney General, how would you address the harms of the war on drugs?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, this is Molly from Andrea's campaign. She actually is just having some technical difficulties and she got kicked off the Zoom, so she's trying to hop back on now.
Okay.
Apologies.
No worries. See her here, admitting her back.
usually my technology that freezes, so I'm delighted that it's someone else. So I thought I was frozen, so I'm not. So this is a good thing.
I know
It
the
was
feeling.
me, Gary, it was me. This would never happen in an in-person meeting.
You handled it very well, Andrea.
I froze and got the boot. So hopefully most of that was responsive to Amelia. So thank you for the question.
And then I think you might have gotten disconnected, but as kind of Andrew, if you want to re-ask your question.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, Andrea, how are you?
Hi.
So my question for you is, as Attorney General, how would you address the harms of the war on drugs?
Oh, where do we begin? That could be a whole Zoom. One, I do think it is taking on continuing the work of the opioid, of the work of the current AG in that office with respect to going after bad actors, because some of those settlement dollars, you have incredible flexibility on how you can use those resources. And it can be, for example, investing in communities that were disproportionately harmed by this war on drugs in innovative and creative ways that we haven't actually seen yet from the AG's office, or just yet. So I'm excited about those possibilities. I also think it has to include more conversations around prison reform and folks who are in prison now waiting, for example, to be paroled for drug offenses. And I think the state has only paroled a couple of people. And so there are regulations and policies that can be changed to allow for some of that restorative justice in response to the war on drugs. And right now there's a case pending with respect to the parole board and whether or not they should have to promulgate regulations or a policy to determine whether or not that process to become parole or eligible for parole can become more objective. It tends to be a little subjective right now. So a whole bunch of ways the office can address these issues, including on a national level.
Wonderful, thank you. And I see Lisa, and then Ben and or Jane.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, Lisa. Lisa, can you?
Hello. I'm just getting my notes here. I was wondering what you would focus on for disability rights. Two examples I'm interested in is disabled individuals continuing to have access to virtual employment who wish it. Also, I'm wondering if you would, do any advocacy around the JRC. I don't know if you know about the situation there where,
No.
yeah, there's currently it's legal for people who are disabled to receive electric shocks. There's different levels of what's acceptable for people who are disabled and not disabled in this state. And the current Attorney General did some advocacy around that area. So I was wondering if you would also, focus or look into that as well.
Absolutely can. And if anything, before I leave, we'll make sure to get your information if you could put in the chat, because I'd love to follow up specifically on this issue, which hasn't come up as of yet. But what has been coming up, not just with respect to virtual work and opportunities, but just accommodations and the range of that and the enforcement of it, and really pushing municipalities and institutions, including public institutions, to actually abide by these laws that are currently on the books. And so I actually started this conversation with a woman who was a part of the Democratic Party, chairing the committee for this community. And she was saying in our call, there's a lot more the office needs to be doing on implementation and enforcement. And I absolutely agree. So this is just one area that I think should absolutely rise to the top. When we talk about discrimination, when we talk about folks feeling left out and left behind, this is usually the population that isn't actually included in the mix. That can absolutely change under the leadership of me, but also the office currently, if prioritized. And specifically on the JRC piece, we'll absolutely follow up. If you could just put your information in the chat, we'll give you a call.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, and great to see you.
Great to see you too.
And then Ben and or Jane.
So hi, Andrea, it's Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. My question revolves around the relationship between the Attorney General and local communities, and it has to do specifically with policing. People are now reimagining the role of police, and I understand that communities really want to be protected by having adequate police, but because of racism and inequity and other things like that. And many people are now experimenting with diversion programs, getting rid of low-level crime, engaging more mental health people, and thinking about how policing can be nurturing to the community. So what would the role of the Attorney General be in relationship to local policies?
A lot. Clearly, I love the work, right? The substance. I've been reviewing fiscal year reports going back to Riley on ways in which this office has been innovative and creative. I think there is a lot more to do in the context of policing. I do think policing, criminal legal reform, prison reform, the cradle to prison pipeline, all of these conversations actually need to be connected, and these systems need to be, the conversations with respect to each system need to be connected. So that's a whole separate conversation. We often talk about policing separate and apart from those who are being locked up and incarcerated. So I appreciate some of the framing of your question. But working with municipalities, there's a whole bunch of things the AG's office can do. And I think actually what we did in Boston is a good model. So when I was the chair of public safety for the council, I got funding from the state restored to help actually bring funding into our police department for specific purposes. And this was actually beat cops, people who could walk and be in community, truly doing community policing. So you saw the same officer in the community all the time. You built a relationship with that person. That's what community policing is. It's building trusted relationships so folks know each other and then are working together to prevent any type of crime, of course, in the community and to ensure safety and accountability. That is something the AG's office can drive statewide with all police departments across the state. The second piece is setting up systems when some things go wrong. Right now, we have the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency in Boston. That is historic. I worked on that legislation with Mayor Marty Walsh's task force at the time. So now we have this office designed to put forth policies and to review things across our public safety agencies to ensure there's a transparency and accountability, and a civilian review board in an office if something goes wrong. Every municipality does not have that. They need it. Why? Because some of the top complaints that come into the AG's office have to do with something involving the police. And this includes folks of every demographic calling. So how do we model what we did in Boston and other communities and resource those efforts and have those conversations? The last piece is the diversity conversation, the lack of diversity. We see it in Boston as well. The limited number of women, people who speak different languages, people of color. Effective policing is usually done if there's a diverse system in a diverse department. The AG's office can absolutely drive more of those conversations with its convening power, et cetera.
I don't know if we're losing her again. Andrea, can you hear us?
Sorry, this is Molly with her campaign again. I think she did get kicked off, but I'll see if she can dial back in, and maybe if she turns her video off, she might have better luck with that. But
yeah, and we'll just have, I think, one more. Jovita, you have a question, right? I'll give you the last question.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
No worries.
Can you hear me?
Yes, let me just readmit Andrea so then you can ask your question. Okay.
Me or
Yes, Jovita, you have a question?
I had a question for Andrea, and that
Yeah.
was around the she has spoke a lot about the gateway cities, and I am curious to know how diverse her campaign staff is as they go to speak about her vision for this department. Thank you.
No. Andrea, are you here? Are you with us?
I am, and so I will get to that question, then clearly wrap up because I need to reboot, I think, my whole system, which is crashing. But Ben, thank you for the question. Just the diversity initiative in public safety agencies critical. In the state police also need to be a part of these conversations, anything related to public safety agencies. So thank you for the question. Staff, so I have a very diverse staff. I will say, actually, it is intergenerational. So my field director is in her 70s. I won't name the number. So Cheryl on my team, an elder Black woman who is living in Dorchester, coordinating and getting folks signatures, to get signatures, et cetera. We have women, I mean, we have everything. And if anything, we are expanding our team. So if you know someone who's interested in joining our team, we're hiring some organizers. We want language diversity. Please let us know. My team members are on, so I can make sure that you have that. Jonathan, maybe you can forward some of that to the ward.
Sure.
Because we are looking.
Okay, John, my question was really more on your current team as you go to the gateway cities.
That's right.
How diverse is the language capacity?
It's okay. It's okay, but it needs to do better. And so what I'm saying there is right now, for example, we are hiring organizers. We had a meeting actually this morning on looking for folks who speak different languages to be a part of this team. And we've even tried to steal folks from other campaigns because there's so many campaigns and everyone's looking. So if you know folks, let me know. But I will say this, we also have incredible volunteers and folks in various communities who also are offering up their services, their talent to me, even if they're not seeking a job because they have a full-time job already, to make sure that we are going into communities and of course have the talent and the skills to be able to connect. Some of these are former elected officials, former team members that used to work in local government, others who are helping in that regard, but we are hiring. This is a priority of mine. So if you know folks who are interested, that would be a big help. And I can forward the position description and make sure we get that to you.
Sure, can do. And then, so one, thank you again for joining us.
Thank
if people
you all
want to
so
learn more
much.
about your campaign, where should they go? And if you could drop it in the chat.
Yeah, AndreaCampbell.org. We'll put it in the chat as well. We'll make sure you get that job description. And Jovita, if you have some folks in mind, let us know. But we are being as intentional as we can. We know how important it is.
Awesome. Well, can we get a round of applause?
Thank you all so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you
Everyone
so
stay
much.
safe and healthy. Bye,
Thank you so much
everyone.
for joining us.
Thank you.
And I believe I have next, if you can turn on video, Sandy Zamor Calixte, and please correct me if I mispronounced the last name.
Hello.
It's Spotlight. So take some time to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, why you're running, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Will do. My name is Sandy Zamor Calixte. The TE is silent. I am a daughter of Haitian immigrants, a mom of a BPS student, a public safety professional, and an advocate for my community, and I reside in Mattapan. For the last 16 years, I've been working at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department to address the systemic barriers. However, I have not been able to implement the change that's needed working behind the scenes. So I recently resigned my position and I'm currently running for the seat. I have an undergrad in psychology, a master's in criminal justice, and a graduate certificate in social justice from Harvard Extension School. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the current sheriff, but this race is not about any one person. It's about changing the system to give people the services they need to have second chances, because we know many people in our communities were never given a first chance. For far too long, Black and Brown people have been denied the education, economic opportunity, and the resources they deserve as a direct result of failed government system. So these failed policies have led to Black men 5 times more likely to be incarcerated and Latinos 1.5 times more to be incarcerated. Therefore, leading our correctional system, incarceration system with the most underserved individuals, which are Black men under the age of 40. And 60 to 70% of those men in the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department have a 6th to 7th grade education. That is achieving the age group of 11 and 13. That is an age group that you cannot legally drop out of school. So therefore, and as they enter the system, their families and our officers recognize that we are not doing all that we can. And so I want to be the individual that can attack some of these systemic barriers that make it hard for individuals when they once they serve their time and they come back to the community. I also would like to implement some implicit, explicit bias training in our academy so that individuals that are working with our underserved population understand their biases. I also want to assess the programs that the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department currently have so that we can make sure they're working. I cannot take that away from the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. They do have a lot of programs. However, they're not assessing them to see what's working. I also do not support the fact that individuals that are incarcerated and their families are currently paying for phone calls, and they're also paying for virtual visits. We know it's a vital component of their rehabilitation while incarcerated, and also once they reintegrate back into the community to have their support from their families. So I cannot support that. In addition to that, I want to leverage our relationships with the private and public sector so that we can get sound jobs and careers for individuals so we can work and tackle this recidivism rate. In addition to that, I would also like to have an advisory board that is comprised of criminal justice individuals, public health individuals, education individuals, private sector, faith-based, an individual from the family, and also someone that's been incarcerated so they can talk about the wants and needs and what we can do so we can break some of these systemic barriers. So those are some of the things that I want to look at. I have a sound record at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, and also one in the community to get the work done and address these changes that need to be done. So I'm here tonight to tell you a little bit about me, and hopefully you have some questions that I can answer.
Awesome, thank you so much. So if folks have questions, you can raise your hand to ask a question. You can just unmute and ask it, or you can drop it in the chat. Any questions? I can see one of my own if I don't see anybody. Helen, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I just want to mention to the candidates that, as she probably knows this already, that there is legislation going through the State House regarding the telephone calls for incarcerated individuals. I assume she knew about this. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct. But I also want to make sure, currently, what they're charging is $6 for a 20-minute virtual visit, which is unacceptable because the department is closed due to COVID. So therefore, there should have been someone advocating to try and get money so that individuals did not have to pay for a virtual visit due to us being closed due to COVID.
I completely agree with that. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll add a question of my own. So if elected sheriff, you'd have a kind of a powerful platform relative to the state legislature when it comes to issues related to, in general, like kind of the broad space of public safety, especially around criminal legal reform. Is there any like you kind of mentioned, both talking about the no cost calls bill? Are there any reforms that you would add kind of advocate for at the state legislature to both, let's say, to better change the model of incarceration and to kind of reduce how many people are incarcerated at a given time, and address those racial disparities?
So we would have to do a couple of things, and we do need the funding, because what the narrative that is being said is that the phone calls pay for programming. And once they're no longer paying for programming, therefore, for phone calls, therefore, the money's not there for the programs. So therefore, I will be talking to the legislators and talking about the need for them to give us money for the programming when we're looking at 60 to 70% of a population having 6th or 7th grade education. That means that they were denied us something when they were in the community. So yes, I'd be seeking funds for that. In addition to that, in California, they're using cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's what's working within corrections, giving people coping mechanisms. So naturally, I would need to get some additional funding so I can have professionals to be able to distribute that. And finally, I do want to say that it could possibly generate some revenue. I did not support Sheriff Tompkins's view on mass and caste. At the time I was there, and I had recommended, because we do have the space, that we rent the location to the Department of Public Health and let them lead with the day-to-day services, because we did not have qualified people to be able to render the services so people can come back successfully. But that was not accepted. So there are other ways that we can try and get some revenue so that we can put things in place, evidence-based sound training, so people are successful within the department and our training system, and also for the population.
Great, thank you. And then any other questions that folks have? And again, you can raise your hand, you can drop your question in the chat, or you can unmute and ask your question. Amelia.
Hey, Sandy, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to get your vision as you see for this particular role around recovery services. We spend a lot of time, I think, talking about the inmates, but I think the hope is that they leave and they go back into this the society, and that the society can catch them, right, and can hold them. So what support or what advocacy would you do around that work?
So currently the Sheriff's Department, we have MOUs with departments like the FBI. We have them with BPD, all these law enforcement agencies that work on policing. What I want to do, because the mandate at the Sheriff's Department is care, custody, and control. And when individuals leave, we no longer have any type of jurisdiction over them. But if we have memorandums with agencies that have continuum of care, we're able to have individuals to follow them. And I also want to develop a relationship with the Department of Motor Vehicles so that we can at least make sure when individuals leave our facility, they have an ID, a mass ID, or their license is renewed. I mean, just about every mom and pop shop has access to the registry. And here we have a state agency, and we can't even make sure individuals can leave with a state ID because you can't get a job without an ID. You need to be able to have that. So these are some of the things that I want to leverage. And when I talk about the advisory board, and that's why I talk about having individuals on the advisory board so that we can work and grow that, so we can see if we can get certain, not just jobs, but careers and places where people can grow, and see if some of these pieces in the financial district will let us utilize or have their like career coaches, their experts, even if we can do it via Zoom, because we're so used to Zoom now, and they can do it after hours in the evening. Currently, there's no programming in the evening at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. And I think that's just a waste of space. We could use that. And I think some individuals are not comfortable coming in, but if you give them that opportunity to be able to teach via Zoom and share their knowledge to help our population, it would be successful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. And then any other questions that folks have? And again, you can raise your hand, you can unmute, or you can drop your question in the chat. Questions going once. Questions going twice. Hearing none, I'll just say, if people want to learn more about your campaign, where should they go?
They should go to sandyforsheriff.com. I have to say, just like Andrea, we're definitely looking for volunteers, looking for staff. This is the first time I'm running, actually going against an incumbent that's been there for years. So as much support as I can get on my candidacy. But again, please go to sandyforsheriff.com. You will see me out there. I plan on meeting the voters where they're at, and that's my pathway to victory. My deputy campaign manager, Benny Thomas, is on. He will drop all the information in the chat. And I thank you for your time this evening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And take a round of applause. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you. This evening.
And then Maureen, is Tanisha here?
She's not here yet. I just texted her. So if we
Okay. Okay. I can hold for a sec as we allow her to join us. And Maureen, congratulations on the new job.
Thank you.
Anybody have any quick announcements to make while we wait for our next speaker?
Yeah, John and Alex Santiago had a beautiful baby, Raphael. So we should congratulate John and Alex.
Mostly Alex.
And Marlene did a wonderful job of bringing people together to nurture them.
That actually reminds me of Carol, that we were just talking about that the other day, that we have the Ward 4 branded baby onesies.
Being printed as we speak.
That's kind of a nice bit of committee swag to have. I will take this kind of quick Paulus, one question I want to ask folks as well. I'd like to start getting on the calendar soon the ice cream social that we always do in August each year, so that for the sake of scheduling, are there any weekends in August that are just a no-go for people? You can think about that now. You can drop it in the chat. But just keep that in mind. If you want to lobby against using a specific weekend in August, just let me know. That's always a fun event. But I saw that Tanisha just joined us. Tanisha, I'm going to put you on spotlight for a bit.
Great. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to put you on spotlight so that you can take some time to introduce yourself. So we can give you like 20 to 25 minutes total. Take some time to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, why you're running, what you want to do with the office, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for the invitation to be here this evening. And thank you, Ward 4, for just the warm welcome that so many of you have already given to me, and the support that you've already given to our campaign. For those who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Tanisha Sullivan. I'm a candidate for Secretary of State here in the Commonwealth. I'm very excited about this campaign, certainly, but I'm even more excited about what I believe is possible for us to accomplish together to strengthen our democracy, and as a result, strengthen our communities and the individuals who live within our communities, specifically as we reimagine really the role and the work of the Office of Secretary of State. Just quickly, by way of background, for those who don't know, I grew up in Brockton. I am the proud daughter of a public school educator. My dad spent 40 years in the Boston public schools, working first in 1974 during the height of busing on the buses. And then went on to hold a number of roles within the district and retired in 2014 as a school leader at the John D. O'Brien, and continues to be actively engaged in BPS to this day. My mom is a small business owner. She started 3 businesses from our home in Brockton, continues to be an innovator, continues to be an entrepreneur. Her first 2 businesses were focused on really helping working families with childcare. At a time when so many so many parents were going into the workforce and looking for reliable, quality, caring care for their children. My mom started a home daycare from our home in Brockton, and then realized that there were other women in our community who wanted to do the same. And so she rolled up her sleeves and started a daycare system to provide support to other women, at the time women, who wanted to also launch daycare systems. My mother then went on to found what is known as the Black Pages of New England, which was a directory that sought to connect Black-owned businesses across New England to one another, but also to our business community, which at the time, it's hard to believe, way back in the late 80s, early 90s, at the time, we're just starting to get into what we now know as supplier diversity. I share the stories about my parents because both my dad's commitment to public education, enduring commitment to public education, and my mom's deep belief in innovation and in small business development and support really serve as guideposts for me in my life, and are motivating factors for the paths that I've chosen. I'm an attorney by training. I'm in my 20th year of practice. I'm the former chief equity officer in the Boston Public Schools, and I'm a civil rights leader. I know many of you from working in and around the greater Boston area, where we've just done much work to advance racial, economic, and social justice. So specifically, just to ring some bells here, we talk about work in our schools to increase teacher diversity, to bring about greater equity to our exam school admissions processes. And of course, we are now leading the fight to restore an elected school committee here in Boston. The only thing that we all agreed on in Boston on the ballot, I will say, every precinct, was that we need to restore some agency to who serves on that school committee. Certainly at the state level, Student Opportunity Act, policing reform, increasing supports for small businesses, and the list goes on. And it is not limited to and it's not limited to working with and through government, but it also includes working, of course, with our labor community as well, to advance meaningfully issues related to racial, economic, and social justice. What I know at this moment is that, you know, while many talk about the fragility in our democracy and of our democracy, for me, that is absolutely true. But the impact of that is what drives me to this moment in running for this office. I don't believe that there's any office in our government, specifically in our state government, that has greater potential to help us tackle and advance the issues that so many of us care about, whether it is increasing the affordability of housing, ensuring that we have quality public schools, ensuring that folks have access to a livable wage, and health care that we can all be proud of. All of those fights that so many of us in this virtual space are a part of and care deeply about are connected to the work that I believe the Secretary of State's office should be doing. So when I think about this office, I want to be very clear. Again, I'm a civil rights leader. And so voting rights and access is the primary responsibility, as I see it, of that office. And so folks should be assured that there's no one who's going to fight harder than me to ensure that we are not only protecting the right to vote here in Massachusetts, but that we are advancing voting rights here in Massachusetts so that we can serve as a model for the rest of the nation when it comes to access to our democracy. And I also know and understand deeply and very personally how important it is that we have safe, secure, and inclusive elections. So when it comes to voting rights and access, there should be no doubt that we will ensure that we are protecting and advancing voting rights and ensuring that we have safe, secure, and inclusive elections that everyone can trust. But I know that a strong democracy, an expansive democracy, a vibrant democracy is so much more. And the reality is this office has been entirely too transactional, entirely too administrative in order for us to see the type of advancement that we all want to see here in the Commonwealth, and in order for the Commonwealth to truly be that model democracy, in order for us as Massachusetts to truly be the blueprint for the rest of the nation when it comes to what democracy should look like. And so as Secretary of State, I will fight to ensure that, yes, we have a government that is transparent and accessible. But in addition to that, I will continue to work. And what I mean by work is sleeves rolled up to ensure that we are working with and in community to cultivate a culture of civic participation. A culture of civic participation that is required for any healthy democracy. I believe that's the work of the Secretary of State. There's no other office in our state government that has that responsibility. It's not enough that we're registering people to vote. We have to know that here in Massachusetts, folks are, yes, going to vote, but we are also remaining actively engaged in our communities so that government isn't just happening to us, it's happening with and through us. In addition, I believe that the office has to take some responsibility for wrestling with and identifying solutions to tackle economic inequality. Quite frankly, there's no big issue in Massachusetts that any constitutional officer should get a pass on. And the fact of the matter is that here in Massachusetts, we have some of the greatest opportunity in the country, but we also have some of the deepest economic inequality in this country. And the Secretary of State's office today is the place you've got to go if you want to do business in the Commonwealth. Today you go there to register, file your annual reports, and pay fees. Very transactional. I believe that there is missed opportunity there. And so as Secretary of State, I will certainly ensure that we continue doing kind of the transactional function. But in addition to that, I will, with laser-like focus, work to provide specifically our small, micro, Main Street businesses with the supports they need in order to be successful. Quick story. Time and time again, I am contacted by small business owners, neighbors, right, and friends who want to start businesses, trying to figure out C Corp, S Corp, LLC, what's the alphabet soup? Do I really have to hire a lawyer for this? Where are the resources? The reality is the Secretary of State's office, I believe, should be the place that a small business owner with a dream, that someone who wants to start an in-home business like my mom's can go to be connected to resources in community that can provide free or low-cost technical supports that are needed to start a business. It should be the place where you go, you click a button, and you are connected to the supplier diversity office in your local community or at the state level to gain access to resources and support that are much needed to thrive. My point here, friends, is that we are at certainly an inflection point in our democracy. And we all know, all eyes on voting rights. We all know how critically important securing our voting rights is. But what we also have to remain focused on is that a strong, vibrant, and expansive democracy requires more. And this office specifically is positioned in such a way that it can deliver. But it's going to take all of us rolling up our sleeves, seeing and catching a new vision for this office, and in so doing, catching a new vision for what our communities can look like and what each of our roles can and should be in our communities. I look forward to more conversation certainly tonight, but over the coming weeks and months. And I really do hope to be able to bring more people into this movement that we're building. Would love to have more folks volunteering on our team and working on our team so that together we can truly deliver. Thank you, Jonathan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And then again, floor is open for questions. If you have a question, you can use the hand raise function. You can kind of just drop your question in the chat, or you can unmute and ask your question yourself. I see Stephanie.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you, Tanisha, for all that you do, fighting for equity on every level in the education space where I see you and everywhere else. But this is a really important space that I'm sure, in terms of voting rights, that I'm sure everyone knows about. But I do public health stuff, and the American Public Health Association is now working on their first voting rights policy, trying to show that voting rights is a social determinant of health. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to read a quick line to you from something that all the APHA members are now working on to get it through. And so I just want to know, as a Secretary of State, where you would be on these policies for Massachusetts, if we can't and probably won't get them federally. So communities with high voter participation enjoy greater social cohesion and belonging and better health. States that make elections more accessible through policies such as automatic and same-day registration, reasonable voter ID requirements, felon reenfranchisement, and mail voting options enjoy higher levels of voter participation and stronger public health outcomes. So that's my question. We saw a little bit of that during the pandemic, but how are we gonna move forward, strengthening that and making sure those privileges stay?
Absolutely. So Stephanie, good to see you. And I really appreciate this question because it gives me an opportunity to amplify this point. As I shared, I enter this work, I enter this space, I enter this race because I do believe that this office is an important linchpin in the advancement of social, racial, economic, climate justice. And I say that because, as you illustrated in your comments, the intersection of all of these issues in one way or another crosses pathway with the responsibilities that lie and rest within the Secretary of State's office. So yes, voter participation specifically is an indicator of the health of a democracy. It is an indicator of civic health. When we think about how, and as a result, when we think about social determinants of health specifically, whether it is housing security, economic security, health security, climate resilience, for example, all of these factors play a role in how someone feels connected to our democracy. A point I want to try to give you a visual on this, because I think sometimes when we think about democracy, it can be so big that it can be hard to wrap our arms around. The way I think about it, it's been helpful, is to think about democracy is community. Community is people. And in order to have a strong democracy, you've got to have strong people, strong families, strong communities. That's where you get into social determinants of health as an indicator. That's where you get into public safety, for example, as an indicator. Again, housing security as an indicator, food security as an indicator. Democracy, a strong democracy is a strong community, and strong communities are reflective of strong people and strong families. There is that connection.
Oops, I'm muted. Tilly Ruth, you have a question.
Yeah, question and comment about lowering the voting age to 16 or 17. And the other piece, but absolutely, why the hell aren't the kids trained how to use real voting machines within the high schools? And by the way, I have to tell you, okay, I'm 90. When I was in high school, where we were in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, they put the voting machines in the schools, and we learned in the sophomore, junior, and senior to use them. Of course, those were the old machines that came off the gambling institutes. I mean, those were the gambling people who actually made those machines, but irrelevant.
I love it. I love it. So, and again, love this question too, because it gives us an opportunity to really amplify what I think is an important part of the work, and that is cultivating a culture of civic participation. That is like really building a culture here in Massachusetts, where, you know, what we do as Bay Staters is we vote and we remain actively engaged in our communities, right? And everybody knows what that means and how that looks. And I believe that in order for that, there are a few things that need to happen. But one of the things that must happen is for us to really help our young people as early as possible to understand democracy, to understand civics, to understand how government works and what our role is in all of this, right? And so currently we are working to restore civics education in our schools, in our public schools, but it is not funded the way it needs to be funded. It's not supported the way it needs to be supported. And as a result, we've got educators who are struggling to find ways to deliver content. We need greater consistency when it comes to civics curriculum, so that, again, our young people are learning at a very early age what it means to be a member of this community, what it means to be a member of our democracy. And I believe that our public schools are one of the best ways for us to do that. I also, and so let me finish that. I believe that the Office of the Secretary of State should be a leader on that front. Right? That's not somebody else's problem. You know, if the responsibility for voting in elections rests with the Secretary of State's office, then the responsibility for ensuring that our young people have access to the information they need, the curriculum they need to be able to actively participate also rests with the Secretary of State's office. Okay. I also believe that as part of that learning process, that we should be having conversation about when our young people start to actually cast their ballot. I love the conversations that are happening now about it really exploring the participation of young people in municipal elections, because that gives young people an opportunity to take some responsibility for what's happening in their communities. And it allows for that learning, right? That learning about engagement to happen in a community that will presumably embrace young people and help them to learn, you know, what this is all about. So that by the time we get to the point 18, 19, 20 years old, we have really allowed for the establishment of some roots in civic engagement and really started to turn the corner in terms of cultivating that culture.
Awesome. And then I see Carol's hand up, and then if Ben, if you want to ask your question after Carol, and then I think this will be the last two.
Hi, Tanisha.
Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I loved what you said about the transactional nature of the current office, and that represents to you a whole host of missed opportunities. And I would like to suggest that one of those opportunities is in the actual design of the election ballot. This has bothered me for years. Like, I can't tell you how
yes.
Beyond annoying this is to me, that Massachusetts continues to, it isn't only transactional in nature, it is so bureaucratic in nature. And often, I know anecdotally, certainly, guys, I have no scientific evidence about this, people will say, I missed the whole second page, or I didn't know there was another column. There is, I mean, I'd love to use the word innovate, but we're so behind innovation at this point. It is time for our ballots to represent the best practices of information design. And I'm just saying, please take this on.
Carol, thank you for that. And your point is very well taken. And it's something that I think we all need to take note of. The fact of the matter is the office needs modernizing. Okay. Whether, right, from an entry point standpoint, when we think about kind of the public facing aspects of this, all the way to, as you described, just some of the practices that exist. The office needs modernizing. That has to be front and center. And in order for us to get to the point where, as I shared, like my vision is for us to be a model democracy. My vision is for us to be a blueprint for the rest of the nation and what this could look like. We're the birthplace of democracy, and we are so far behind. So step one is modernizing. I hear you on the ballot. I've taken a note of that because, you're right. But step one is modernizing, and that is the portfolio and how user friendly it is, how accessible it is for all of us, so that we can get to the point where Massachusetts can rightfully be the leader when it comes to what democracy looks like.
That ballot moment represents so much opportunity for many, many, many citizens. That's it. That's their user moment, right? And to squander that with antiquated design. I'm a graphic designer, and Nina is as well, and she's given me thumbs up with this question. So it is just, it's obtuse. And I hope that becomes a priority as you modernize all the systems. That's a central one.
Thank you so much for that.
You bet.
And then Ben, did you want to ask your question, or do we go on to should I go on to the next speaker?
Let's go on to the next speaker. Thanks.
Okay. Well, finally, Tanisha, if people want to learn more about your campaign, where should they go?
So I believe we dropped it in the chat here. So TanishaSullivan.com, TanishaSullivan.com is our website, where, of course, across social platforms, our handle on Twitter, Facebook, IG is at Tanisha, the number 4MA. Please follow us. Visit our website to learn more, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of you on the trail and on Team Tanisha. Thank you so much. Look forward to speaking again.
Awesome. Can we get a round of applause? Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And then I will bring up State Rep Liz Miranda, who's running for the 2nd Suffolk State Senate District. Liz, thank you for joining us. You can take some time, introduce yourself, who you are, why you're running, and then we can do some Q&A.
Awesome. Good evening, everybody. Coming behind Tanisha Sullivan, who I've known for well over 25 years as my not only president of the NAACP here, which I've been active in for a very long time, but also as my sorority sister. It's always good to see that you have put the capital on the D in democracy and decided to run for office. It's not easy. Speaking as someone who has ran twice, I've won, but I'm also running again. So just good to see you and your team. Hi, everybody. My name is Liz. I am the state rep of the 5th Suffolk district here in Massachusetts, in the Massachusetts legislature. I come to you as one of 5 Black women in the entire Mass House and Senate. And I was elected in 2018 on a very historic and special night when Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, DA, now U.S. Attorney Rollins, and Rep. Lugardo were all elected on the same night. So we made Massachusetts history with 4 Black women getting elected to office. I'm gonna start by sharing a little bit about my story, what the last 3 years and 3 months have been like in the Massachusetts legislature, why I'm running, and hopefully leave room, lots of room for discussion, because I'm very comfortable in that space. Politicians and elected officials love to talk. I am one of those that loves to take talk into action and actually listen. and dialogue with the residents of our great city. And so I probably will speak a lot less than I've been allotted, just because I think that the most important thing, particularly for people who spend their valuable time to join wards or civic organizations, is really about what matters to them. So I was born, I'm 41 years old, but I was born in the Dudley Triangle to two Black immigrant parents from the islands of Cabo Verde, West Africa. Although Cape Verde is how it was referred to, it is now changed to Cabo Verde. And my mom was a teen single immigrant mom who went to Madison Park High School. We had a big family, and she was here 3 years, and then she got pregnant with me, dropped out of Madison Park High School, and began her long career, which I'm happy to share, still going, 40 years as a cook in Boston hotels. And the longest is that's Sheraton Boston, very close to many of you, and a Unite here 26 local member of her union. I went to Boston Public High Schools, and I was very fortunate that I went to the John D. O'Brien School of Math and Science here in Roxbury, where I was born and raised, and got into Wellesley. And when I went to Wellesley, although it was a school only 10 miles away, I had never walked on the campus of Wellesley before accepting. I had never been to the town of Wellesley, and it wasn't until my mother shared with her coworkers and the chefs and the people at the hotel that her daughter had got into Wellesley, and they told her that she was mispronouncing it. And that couldn't be, that I kind of decided to go to an all girls, all women's college down the road in the wealthiest town at the time in Massachusetts, coming from the poorest district in the Commonwealth, which was the Dudley Triangle. But the Dudley Triangle, to me, at 13 years old, although I noticed that things were different, we had 1,400 parcels of vacant land. We had a lot of illegal trash transfer stations. We didn't have bus stops or trash receptacles. And every day I'd walk by lots that people would throw trash in. I was happy. I was a young person who lived in a home full of love with my mom and her siblings and my grandparents. I lived in a community where everyone knew your name. And I walked to school most days, or waited for the number 15 bus, and didn't really realize that I was poor or in a working class community until I got to the O'Brien and realized that not Roxbury wasn't everything to everyone. I really felt like Roxbury was the place to be. And at 13, 14 years old, I became active with the Nubian Roots Youth Committee out of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. And if anyone on this call doesn't know the history of DSNI, there are two movies, Holding Ground and Gaining Ground. And there's a book called Streets of Hope. And what I learned from DSNI and Nubian Roots has stayed with me these 28, 29 years, because it was the first time that I realized that as a young person, that I really mattered, that I could make a difference, that my voice mattered. And I learned about resident-led leadership. Actually, funny story, I was littering. I'd walked out of I'm really proud of that, but I'd walked out of a corner store and passed by a lot. There were no trash receptacles, and I had a teeny juice and a bag of chips, what I could afford, 50 cents. And Ross Everdell from DSNI saw me, and she was like, "Why are you doing that?" And I was just like, look around, like, where else am I going to put this? And she invited me to a neighborhood cleanup that weekend, and to invite all my friends. And the rest is history. I never stopped after that neighborhood cleanup being invested in environmental justice work, because I finally understood that the things that were happening in my community were actually man-made. My community wasn't that way because people didn't care. My mom and stepdad got up every day at 3 a.m. and worked in factories in the back of hotels while I worked 2 jobs since the age of 13. So we were hardworking people, but the community had been long redlined, disenfranchised, and disinvested in from the city of Boston. And that had happened for 4 decades. After doing that for a long time, I was active in an organization that's no longer here called My Town, that really changed when people were talking about civics and history. My Town was started by Carolyn Crockett, that many people know, that was most recently the chief of equity for the city of Boston, has been my lifelong mentor. And she started My Town to teach young people the history of our city, the history of the many immigrant groups that came to the city and made the city what it is. I learned about the Southwest Corridor Park and the fight to not build an 8-lane highway. I learned about Mel King and met him and worked with him. I learned about the activists who started DSNI, Peter Medoff, and many residents, many who couldn't even speak English, who had the Don't Dump on Us campaign. I learned about redlining. And I learned about the indigenous community that really shaped Massachusetts. Up until that point of My Town, I had never learned about Black history or indigenous history or the history of the Puerto Ricans who started Via Victoria. These were things that I learned at 16. And I was really sad that I would not take a Black history class or AP government class until the age of 17. But My Town was my school. Out of school time has been incredibly important to me. After going to Wellesley and being in these organizations, I decided when I graduated, I would see these signs on the campus of Wellesley as I was walking on this beautiful campus. And the sign said, "Women who will." And I would be like, hey, like women who will do what, right? Women who will make a difference in the world. Now we have more inclusive language. People who will make a difference in the world. And when I would see those signs, I would ask myself, what would I do after 4 years at Wellesley? Everybody was going into iBanking. Some people were going into grad school. As you can imagine, being at an institution like Wellesley, every day we were pushed to sort of lead, be in spaces to lead. But I decided senior year that I would go back to My Town, become its youth director, and then eventually become its executive director for a short period of time, even at 21, 22 years old, because I wanted to invest in the communities that made a difference. So fast forward 15 to 20-year history working in youth and community organizing, philanthropy, entrepreneurship. I was even a college professor at Bunker Hill and Roxbury Community College, and it taught me a lot about, even as a Black woman from the Dudley Triangle, I had a lot of privilege in getting the education that I did. I went to an exam school, one of 3, and then I went to a top tier college, one of the top liberal arts colleges in the world and top women's colleges. When I came back home, I didn't realize that I had been changed and moved in ways that many of my friends were not afforded. And so I thought I had my dream job in 2017 of running the Hawthorne Youth and Community Center, an organization that worked a lot on the Fort Hill, Highland Park area of Roxbury, on urban agriculture and the arts. And I'd always wanted to be an executive director of a youth-led nonprofit. And then something struck my family that I was not expecting. And although I had spent better part of my life fighting for gun violence prevention and intervention, because I lost my first friend at 18, working to end mass incarceration because my birth father and all of my brothers were incarcerated by the time I walked on the campus of Wellesley. After spending 15 to 20 years working on immigrant rights because both my father and my brother were deported, my youngest brother, Michael, was killed. And Michael went out to a nightclub in Boston and he never made it home. And here I was in my dream job, 2017. So I think I was 36 or 37. really fully vested in community work. And it felt like I'd saved many, many young people. I had fed them, I had clothed them, I had taught them, I had given them a summer after school job. I had educated some of them. I had worked with the South and Lower Roxbury Youth Workers Alliance, the High Risk Youth Work Alliance. I had worked with Opportunity Youth. I came back. I did everything I was told to do. You come back to your neighborhood and you help. And I wasn't able to save my little brother. And I know a lot of people want me to believe that it wasn't my fault, and the stigma and shame that comes with being a survivor of homicide is something that I had probably worked 18 years to not think about. But my brother was a different type of hurt. It was a different type of hurt because although Massachusetts has the lowest number of gun deaths in the country, has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, communities like Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Jamaica Plain have faced decades and decades of losing young people and elders to something that I believe is very preventable. I believe that gun violence is preventable because it is, for me, a lack of opportunity, a lack of access to mental health and trauma resources. And we still haven't figured out how to stop the illegal pipeline of crime guns in our community. But 6 months after being in deep grief, I shook myself out of this space of feeling like I couldn't do much more and realized that I could do a lot. I was called by many, many people who told me that my state rep, including him, Evandro Cavallo at the time, was leaving to run for DA, and I should consider running for office. But I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I belonged. I didn't think I was enough. I was looking at the Massachusetts legislature. I didn't know how to write a bill. And I said to myself, is this the place for me? But I was encouraged and I ran and I won every ward and precinct in my district. I set a record, over 10,000 people going out to vote in my district, which they told me my district wouldn't be voting. And for the last 3 years, I have passed 5 amendments, mostly around things that are connected to my lived experience. I was the lead author in the Police Accountability Bill, where I focused on use of force guidelines. I have elevated maternal health and birthing justice. I've passed 2 amendments on environmental justice, communities, and equity. And just a couple weeks ago, passed the jail-based voting amendment to re-enfranchise the 8,000 to 10,000 people who are incarcerated in our mass DOC system, who have the right to vote but have not had the access. And so I'm running for Senate because it matters that people like me, along with the residents of this new district, have access to people that believe in resident-led leadership, that will work on progressive issues like gun violence, like hunger, like ending mass incarceration. And the climate change fight is one of our biggest issues of our time, but we cannot forget environmental justice communities. So I'll stop there. That's a little bit about my story. I look forward to talking to many of you offline if you so wish. I will be putting my information in the chat, but just really wanted a chance to talk to this community. This community has changed boundaries a lot. When I was growing up, much of this was Roxbury in the South End and a little bit of Fenway. And so I'm very familiar with this community as a lifelong resident of the city and looking forward to talking to you all. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then any questions that folks have, and again, you can raise your hand, you can drop your question in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask your question.
Folks are brave. I want to hear from the 90-year-old Miss Texera. Are you Portuguese by any chance, or Cape Verdean? I was like interested in your last name, but no, I see another hand.
Susie.
Hi, Susie.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent.
Good, good. I wanted to say thank you for everything you said, and thanks for all that you're already doing in the community. I mean, I don't live in your community right now, but a lot of my students do, and you've been doing a lot of great work for the students and education. So my question is just a general question, because I feel like you're very goal-oriented. And I'm just wondering, what would be, as state senator, like a goal that you would set that would be, okay, if I've accomplished this goal, then I am successful as a state senator? And I know that's really broad, but I'm just wondering, what's off the top of your head at this moment?
So I could easily answer that, 'cause I've thought a lot about it this actually. And, as a product of Boston Public Schools and the city's sort of out of school time network, I've thought a lot about that this is the first time that this Senate seat is a Black Senate seat. It centers, although there's lots of wards and precincts outside of Blue Hill Ave, it is the first time that Blue Hill Ave is together in the same Senate seat, running from Roxbury all the way through Mattapan. And I've thought about the ways in which I have led in the State House already, around being very grassroots oriented. I've been very visible and responsive. I've brought a lot of people. Every bill and amendment that I've passed has had a coalition of residents who have helped me write the bills. And I think for me, success looks like, if I can't get 160,000 people to work on everything at the same time, but if I am able to be the type of leader and continue the work on centering what I believe is the progressive issues of our day, by using my community organizing background to ensure that residents from every district, whether it's Hyde Park, JP, South End, Fenway, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, that they feel that they have an elected official that will work with them and be present on bringing the community together to fight for the greatest good. The district is very different. If you are in parts of JP and in the Fenway and South End, the outcomes, health outcomes, the economic outcomes for you and your family are very different than the people who live in the Franklin Field or Franklin Hill projects on Blue Hill Ave. And there's just deep, deep divide. And so for me, unifying the district on policy issues and organizing to make sure that the Senate and the House hear from the people of this district, where we want to work to end mass incarceration, improve health equity, improve economic mobility, and create a sense of community belonging. I know that I've done a good job. And so that's the long and short of sort of this idea that it's not only about what you get done as a senator. I've been able to get 5 amendments in my first 2 terms. That's something that I'm very, very proud of. But it's how I've done it that has made me even prouder, and who I've done it with and who I've done it for. And so resident-led leadership is very important to me, and I'll know that I'm on the right track if I'm getting the type of calls and emails and community conversations on issues that matter to this district.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then any other questions that folks have? And again, raise your hand, drop it in the chat, or unmute and just ask your question yourself.
A quick comment.
Yeah, Tilly.
Yeah, it is Cape Verdean. My husband of 50 years. And yeah, we've been involved in politics since, well, lived here a long time, but my first electoral piece was when Mel King first ran, and our kids weren't in school yet. And my husband says, "Why are you bothering? The kids aren't in school." I said, "Well, they are going to be, but how about Black representation?" And boom, Ed was one of Mel's, was Ward 12 coordinator.
Yeah, and so that's Roxbury. And what's very interesting is that, being the first Cape Verdean woman full Cape Verdean woman, meaning that both my parents are of Cape Verdean descent. I was born here. But the thing that's been exciting is though Massachusetts has had well over 200-year history with Cape Verdeans working on whaling and being on ships, and then cranberry bogs across the Commonwealth. There's a vibrant community here along the second Suffolk, where Cape Verdeans have made it their home. And so I look forward to maybe visiting you and talking about Ed and talking about what it's been like to grow up in a Cape Verdean household in a very diverse community.
One quickie, because his family, they're from New Bedford. One piece came over in 1900, but the other was a whaler. And I don't know if you know that, and they were from Brava, but in the 19th century, the black whalers were called Brava.
I figured that they messed up on a lot of people's names. My family's from the island of Fogo, and I'm really looking forward. I love history, and I was a history major. My parents wondered why, and they was like, what are you gonna do with that? I've been able to do a lot, Mom and Dad, with being a history major, so thank you.
Maybe I'll see if I can get my granddaughter, who's now just moved into Boston on her own.
Oh, this is so exciting. Yes. Oh, thanks you, Miss Sixer. It's been great to hear from you.
Awesome. Any other questions that folks have? Carol.
I don't have a question. I just want to say, what an absolute joy to hear you speak tonight. I've never heard you speak before, and we at Ward 4 make a point of trying to invite everyone to come and meet us. And I just found your comments to be so heartwarming and genuine. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I am running on my large matcha. But the idea is that I really care a lot about that people understand that after 3 years and 3 months in the Massachusetts legislature, I've learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned is that titles really don't matter. They don't shield you from much. You know, my grandmother died during COVID-19. My whole family got COVID. And part of that was because of the health inequities that are in our communities, you know, and it was a real learning lesson to be in COVID-19 as a leader and legislator, to realize that the things that people needed the most, a stable job, a safe place to live, food, and access to PPE and information in their own language. Those are things that I worked on for a long time. And that wasn't about policies or bills, but people just needed help. And I wanted to take my time to talk to Ward 4, like I would like people to talk to me. I think a lot of times legislators, we talk very high level about the things that we're doing, but most people in community just want to know how their life will be better and how you'll be a good representative for them. And I hope that you will learn more about my candidacy, and I look forward to talking to all of you. And one thing for you, you said you were a graphic designer. A friend of mine, Gabe Mugar, wrote a lot on community design theory. And I've been reading his stuff because a lot of the work that I did around mental health and wellness, I tried to infuse some of his thinking around how design could be done in a way that could really impact people's lives. So hopefully you look for his book. He wrote a book. It's really cool on community design thinking. So thank you.
That is so central to my very being. So thank you. Thanks for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Awesome. And so Liz, if people want to learn more about your campaign, where do they go? And I think that's already been dropped into the chat.
Yes, my team is here. Thank you guys for being here. I have a very amazing young team. And I was like, Jonathan is keeping me on track with time. Thank you all. I see Amelia, how are you? Good to see you. You know, I work very closely with Rep. Tyler, and these phenomenal young Black women are doing great work in the community and also at the State House. So good to see you. Good night, everyone.
Awesome. And can I get a round of applause for Liz? Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Awesome. And then with that, can I get any other kind of final announcements, questions, or comments before I entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening? Can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Jonathan.
you.
Bye.